I am Emily, 32, and I grew up between rows of vines that never loved me back. My parents let my brother wear the crown, and I learned to tie knots and swallow questions. Last month, I finally earned a promotion they praised in toasts. Then they posted that I would fund the Vineyard revival. Tonight at the reunion, they asked for $100,000. I smiled, reached for a folder. Before we start, tell me where you are watching from. Like and subscribe, and stay. I remember the vineyard by the sound it made when wind moved through the leaves. The rows ran straight and strict across a slope that browned in late summer and shone in winter frost. I learned to prune with a small knife that fit my palm. My father showed me where to cut so the plant would breathe. He said patience mattered more than force. I believed him and clipped with care even when my hands stung in cold air. Caleb never liked the slow rhythm. He was older by 2 years and gifted with a grin that bought him time. If I broke a trellis hook, I apologized and fixed it. If he knocked over a crate, my parents laughed and said he was spirited. Praise gathered around him like sunlight, and I learned to work in the shade. On Saturdays, I scrubbed the stain from our porch while he hosted friends in the tasting room and poured glasses like a host on a stage. My mother kept a notebook for harvest notes. Caleb scribbled jokes in the margins, and everyone found it charming. I wrote out weights and dates and tiny weather maps, and no one noticed except me. I kept that notebook habit when I left for college. It soothed me to set facts in a line and watch patterns emerge. In math class, I loved that a proof could stand without applause. The Vineyard taught me discipline, even when it did not grant credit. At night, I would fall asleep to the smell of crushed skins and wet soil. I wanted approval, but I also wanted quiet. When Caleb announced he would one day run the place, my parents clapped like he had already saved it. I asked what I could study that would help if I came back. My father waved a hand and said the vines would teach me. The vines did teach me something. They taught me about scarcity and attention and the cost of leaning too hard on the same branch. In senior year of high school, I noticed my first real symbol. A cluster on a row we called the far lane ripened unevenly. Some grapes were sweet and heavy, others green and hard. I asked my father why. He said that particular vine had been shaded by a new fence. It could not catch the morning sun, and so it fell behind. I did not say the thought that lodged and would not move. I wondered if children could be shaded too. I learned to read the land the way some girls learn to read faces. I could tell a morning of fog meant mildew would need watching. I knew a day of hard heat meant we would water in the evening and listen for the pump. I carried those small sciences like secret medals. Caleb carried a different kind of currency. He had charm. People handed him patience before he had earned it. I learned to hand myself the patience I needed. On a winter afternoon, my father showed me how to pull last year's growth from the wire without breaking the new canes. His hands were rough and sure. He said a grower makes hard cuts so the plant can live. The words sank in deeper than he knew. Hard cuts. Live. I tucked them away the way I tucked shears into my belt. I did not know then that one day I would make a cut that was not about wood at all. Caleb made people feel seen in a way that made them offer him things. He could walk into a room of strangers and leave with invitations. In his 20s, he took a short course on wine and announced that he was ready to manage. He had never balanced the books or traced a supply line. He had a story and a smile. My parents pressed the keys into his palm like a blessing. The first years felt buoyant because he hosted events that looked beautiful in photographs. There were string lights and music and flights with clever names. He booked a designer to redo the labels and paid for a new sign at the road. He ordered a pizza oven for a courtyard that had barely been used. I watched the social pages from a dorm library screen and felt two truths in my chest. I was glad the place looked alive. I also knew attention can be a mask when the numbers do not square. I took on extra shifts at a coffee shop to cover textbooks. Caleb sent me late-night messages that were all surface. His crowds were fun, he was tired, he was a visionary, he was changing the culture. When I asked about yields and barrel costs, he switched the subject to tone and mood. Over time, the posts grew more frequent, and the invoices did too. My parents did not tell me that they were dipping into savings. They said he was building momentum, and we should be proud. I heard the first hard rumor at a cousin birthday party. A neighbor mentioned that a delivery truck had left without unloading because no payment had cleared. I looked at my mother, and she smiled too quickly. She carried plates to the sink, as if clatter could erase a subject. Later, my father called and told me not to worry. He said a slow season was normal. He said I did not understand because I lived in the city. I let that sentence fall between us and weigh the room. Caleb kept staging tastings with themes that seemed to float above the land. He ordered lavender bundles from a boutique shop to tie around napkins. He did not walk the rows in the morning when mildew needed to be caught early. He spoke of rebranding while ignoring the irrigation pump that coughed for weeks. The vineyard weathered all this because vines are stubborn. They try to live even when you do not listen. A bad season became a heavy loan. A heavy loan became a stack of IOUs behind the counter. My parents began to put bills in a drawer, as if paper could become quiet when hidden from light. Vendors started calling the house phone again. My mother let it ring, and then lifted the receiver with a voice that tried to sound bright. Caleb told anyone who would listen that the next harvest would be the turning point. He argued for another event with live music and a themed flight. He joked that numbers were for people with gray suits and no imagination. He was not cruel. He was careless in a way that hurts the same. The land forgave him for a while. The balance sheet did not. By then, Caleb had cultivated a following that loved his story more than the soil. He had a group of friends who posted from the courtyard with captions about dreams. He did not learn to read a ledger. He did not show up in boots when the forecast warned of frost. He walked through the tasting room shaking hands while a field hand tried to patch a hose with tape. When someone challenged him, he delivered a joke and a promise. People like believing the next season will fix the last one. My parents did too. They mortgaged a piece of property that had been clear for decades. They told no one. They co-signed an equipment loan for a machine that mostly sat under a tarp. Caleb posted photos of a gold-rimmed flight while the pump leaked near the creek. I watched from the city and felt the strange mix of relief that I had left and guilt that I could not carry them out of a hole I did not dig. The distance did not protect me from the sting. It only gave me a longer view. I left for college with a second-hand suitcase and a scholarship letter that felt like oxygen. In the city, I learned deadlines and budgets and the way a plan can be built from scratch. I studied marketing analytics because it married story and evidence. During the day, I worked in a small firm where the office smelled like printer toner and lemon oil. At night, I took online classes and taught myself how to translate numbers into direction. Years stacked. I paid off a credit card and then another. I rented a studio above a hardware store and learned to love the thud of deliveries on the stairs. I made a friend in my building who left spare basil on my window ledge and took care of my plant when I traveled. I moved from assistant to coordinator to manager. The week I became senior manager, my boss slid an envelope across the table with a new title and a raise. I touched the paper and felt steady for the first time in a long time. I called my parents that night. They whooped, and for a minute I was a child again with wind in my hair and dirt on my shoes. We planned a dinner when I could drive down. At that dinner, they lifted glasses and my mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. My father said he always knew I would blaze a trail. I believed him for the span of a toast. The check came, and I reached out of habit. He let me. On the drive home, I placed the award letter on the passenger seat as if it were a companion. The next morning, I noticed the way praise can sit on top of something else. My mother had posted a photo with a caption about family dreams and a new chapter for the Vineyard. The comments were full of hearts and wishes. A cousin asked if I would be leading the revival. Another wrote that it was beautiful when success returned to the soil that raised you. I felt a thread pull in my chest. I wanted to believe that the toast had been only pride. I also knew how quickly pride becomes plan when money is involved. I brought the letter to my office and snapped a quiet picture of it for myself. I did not post it. I slipped a copy into my notebook beside a grocery list and a sketch of a budget. If I had learned anything since I left, it was that a plan without numbers is only a wish. I kept working. I said yes to a new client. I cooked a simple dinner in my small kitchen and watched the light move across the floor. I told myself that I could be proud without being used. The next week, my mother shared a memory photo of Caleb and me as kids. The caption said that roots matter more than distance. She wrote that a comeback was on the horizon. People tagged me and wrote saved by family love. My chest tightened. I closed the app and went for a walk. I counted 4 blocks and called a friend who had grown up in a house where boundaries were not curses. She said you can love them and still say no. I said I would try. The posts kept coming. My mother shared an old photo of Caleb and me carrying baskets side by side. The caption said, "Rebuilding is a family project." She added a line about gratitude for my promotion and the way it would bless the vines. My phone buzzed with messages from people I had not heard from in years. They wrote congratulations and how generous of you and what a relief for your parents. I had not said yes to anything. I had not even been asked. I drove down the next weekend for a visit already on the calendar. The tasting room smelled like soap and lemon slices. The wood table in the office was stacked with envelopes that did not look like invitations. Caleb bounced in with a hug that knocked my shoulder. He called me the rescue squad and asked how soon a transfer could happen. I asked for the books. He waved toward a drawer and said the software had been acting up. I opened files that looked like a storm. There were fees for events that did not break even. There were late charges on equipment that did not earn its keep. There were notes that said paid later, and later had not arrived. We ate pasta at my parents' house that night. The porch light hummed. My father spoke in generalities about loyalty and legacy. He used my middle name like a ribbon. My mother asked about my favorite childhood row, as if nostalgia could loosen a knot. I asked what they needed. They looked relieved and told me we could talk at the reunion when the family was gathered. They said it would be good to share the plan with everyone at once. I felt my shoulders tense. Every reunion memory I owned included a moment where my work was overlooked, and Caleb was lifted to a chair for a story. I drove back to the city and tried to write an email that would draw a hard line. I deleted it. I had spent a lifetime trying not to hurt them, even when I was hurt. So I made a different plan. I gathered photographs that represented my actual life. A worn shot of me on graduation day with a thrift store blazer. A key in my palm when I moved into the studio. A picture my friend took when the promotion letter lay open on my kitchen table. I slid them into a simple folder. It felt right to choose paper over a post. On the morning of the reunion, I printed a copy of my budget. Not to parade numbers, but to remind myself that money is not magic. Rent and student loans and savings for a future that belonged to me. I tucked the pages under the photographs. The drive south stretched under a hot blue sky. I passed a delivery truck with our family name on it and wondered if there was anything inside. I turned off the highway and followed the old road that dips near the creek. The vines appeared like an old chorus line that knows the steps even when the band forgets the song. As I pulled in, cousins waved and uncles carried folding chairs across the gravel. The hall doors were propped open. Inside, someone had arranged flowers in mason jars on a long table. A chalkboard near the entrance said, "Welcome home." I felt the familiar ache of wanting that to be true, and the equal need to define home for myself. I slipped the folder into my bag and told my breath to match my steps. The great hall looked almost grand when I walked in. Twinkle lights softened the beams, and a long table held platters of fruit and cheese arranged with care. People called my name and hugged me and asked about the city. I knew half of them had read my mother words. The other half would hear them by dessert. Caleb wore a crisp shirt and held a glass that glowed. My parents looked tired in a way they had tried to hide with makeup and smiles. Toasts began, simple at first. An aunt thanked the rain last week. A neighbor praised the volunteers who had helped mend a fence. Then my father cleared his throat and spoke about legacy. He talked about how families weather storms by linking arms. He looked toward me as if the speech might warm the distance. My mother took over and said life has seasons, and now we enter the one called restoration. She said our daughter Emily just got a promotion, and we are so proud. She paused. She said her success opens a door for us all. The room brightened with the sound of people who wanted to believe in a good ending. My father added a figure. $100,000 would keep loans current, replace a failing pump, settle accounts with vendors, and give Caleb room to execute a new vision. For a heartbeat, the tone of the hall shifted from celebration to expectation. My cousin squeezed my arm. Caleb smiled like a magician about to flip a card. I felt the old ache surge, the one that had accompanied every unjust comparison. I also felt something new, a steadiness that came from years of paying my own bills and sleeping with a lock I had purchased. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. I did not rush. Silence moved across the room as if drawn on a string. I opened the cover and cut the distance between what they assumed and what was true. The first photograph showed me on the campus lawn in a blazer that did not fit quite right. I placed it near the center of the table. The next was the key in my palm with my chipped nail polish and a background of old stairs. The last was the letter on my kitchen table with a coffee ring near one corner. I set down the budget pages too. I spoke without raising my voice because sometimes calm cuts deeper than volume. I said that these pictures were the investment I knew how to make. I said that I had built a life without help and that I was not prepared to erase my future to patch choices that had ignored math. I said that I was proud of my work and not ashamed to draw a boundary. I looked at Caleb, and I said that leadership honors the land before it throws a party. I looked at my parents, and I said that love does not require sacrifice to the point of self-harm. No one clapped. It would have been strange to clap. Some relatives stared at the photographs as if they were sacred. Others looked at the floor. My father tried to speak and stopped. My mother pressed her lips and blinked. Caleb laughed in a soft way that only sharpened the moment. He said this was dramatic. He said I was making a point for the crowd. He said the family needed me to be generous. I answered that generosity without accountability is a hole that never fills. I pointed to the stack of envelopes in the office and the pump that had rattled for weeks. I said that vendors deserve payment before guests deserve a new label. I said I wished this was different. I said I had spent years waiting for a day when my work would be seen, even if it did not glitter. I said this was that day for me. Then I closed the folder and kept it beside me like a railing. A hush rested on the room like dust. Someone coughed. A child asked for water. The world kept its usual pace, even while my family tried to learn a new one. I returned to my seat and let my hands lie flat on the table. My heart slowed. I thought of the fence that once shaded a vine, and the patient cuts that had brought it back. I had made my cut. I sat inside the truth of it. After my words, the room did not return to the original party it had tried to be. People began to move in small clusters. An aunt handed me a napkin as if I might cry, though I did not. A neighbor squeezed my shoulder and said nothing, and somehow that felt like help. My parents spoke to each other in a corner, with the concentration of people trying to assemble a bridge from scraps. Caleb went outside to smoke and came back with a joke that no one caught. I walked into the evening light. The rows looked taller than they had at noon. I followed the path to the far lane where that uneven cluster had once taught me about shade. The fence still stood. The vine beside it had recovered over years of careful cuts. The new growth wrapped around the wire with the stubborn hope plants carry, even when people fail them. I touched a leaf and thought about attention. I thought about how the work of care is not loud. It is a hand at the right place at the right time. My phone buzzed with messages that ranged from brave to selfish. I put it in my pocket and breathed. My father joined me. He said that he did not know about some of the invoices. He said he had been tired. He said he had wanted a story to be true so badly that he stopped reading the numbers. I did not let that sentence absolve him. I also did not rub salt in the part of him that looked like the man who had taught me where to cut a cane so the plant could breathe. Later, my mother found me near the shed where we used to weigh crates. She asked if we could figure something out together. I told her I would not fund a plan that did not change who was in charge. I told her that boundaries were not a threat. They were a shape that allowed love to stand without falling. She cried, quiet and defeated. I gave her a tissue from my bag because some gestures remain, even when others must stop. I slept that night in my old room where the wallpaper peeled at the corner. In the morning, I made coffee in a chipped mug and sat on the back step. Caleb did not come out. My parents spoke in soft voices that did not include my name. I packed my bag and placed the folder on top like a small flag. Before I left, I walked the rows one more time. I let the sun touch my face and thought about choice. On the drive back, I did not turn on the radio. The quiet felt like ownership. In the weeks after the reunion, my parents called. The first calls were barbs wrapped in guilt. Then came apologies that did not yet accept change. I listened without offering fixes. Meanwhile, I met with 2 cousins for dinner in the city. They told me they had silently wondered about the money for months. They said my speech had cracked something open. We laughed about old stories and made new plans that had nothing to do with the vineyard. I bought a small plant on the way home and set it near the window. The leaves were glossy and young. It did not ask for a story. It asked for water and light. At work, I stepped into my new role with both feet. I led a meeting on a Tuesday morning and did not apologize for the agenda. I sent a proposal to a client that included a budget section that sang the truth. My boss nodded and said it was the cleanest plan he had seen in months. That night, I walked home under a sky that threatened rain and felt the strange new weight of being my own witness. I was not waiting for anyone to clap. My parents tried different angles. My father asked if I could advise Caleb on a new marketing idea. I said no until the pump was replaced and the vendors were paid. My mother asked if I could at least help with a small campaign. I said, boundaries are not small or large. They are either kept or not. We learned to have shorter calls. We learned to say I love you and then good night. It was imperfect. It was honest. Time gave shape to the aftermath. Caleb tried to launch a new event and canceled it when tickets did not move. My parents met with an accountant who showed them the picture in black and white. They put the pizza oven up for sale and paused the designer contract. They asked a neighbor for help with irrigation and paid him in installments they could actually meet. The vineyard did not die. It also did not glow the way it used to in photographs. It settled into something closer to true. A season of pride gave way to a season of repair. In my own life, I kept building. I took on a project that stretched me. I learned to lead a meeting without apologizing for having a plan. I visited a trail on Sunday mornings and let my breath sync with my steps. I said yes to dinner with a friend who had always given me steady attention. I cooked more. I slept better. I hung a simple shelf above my table and set one bottle of our wine on it. Not as a promise and not as a prayer, as a reminder of what I did not let run my life. I thought often about what legacies are made of. I thought about my mother notebook and my father quiet advice about patience, and how both had been twisted by a story that centered a son who could smile through a bill. I loved them. I did not follow them into debt. Love had become a verb I could live with. It meant answering when calls were honest and refusing when they were not. It meant visiting on a Saturday and leaving on a Sunday with my folder still my own. One afternoon, I sat by my window with the plant I had bought after the reunion. New leaves had unfurled with a pale green I wanted to memorize. I opened my folder again, not to relive the confrontation, but to honor the path. There was the blazer that did not fit quite right. There was the key that had taught me to claim a lock. There was the letter that had urged me to keep a budget. I added one more picture. It was a snapshot from the trail with light through trees. It looked like breathing. If my parents ever ask for a grand gesture again, I will answer with a plan that keeps me whole. If Caleb ever says I ruined the party, I will tell him that the land is not a stage. It is a living thing that deserves mornings in boots and afternoons with spreadsheets. It is soil before lights. I hope he learns that. I hope we all do. But my life does not wait for that lesson. My life keeps its own time. I pour a glass from that bottle once a year, with friends who show up on time and wash the dishes without being asked. We toast not to drama, but to shape and care. This is the lesson I carry. Family legacy is only worthy when it is also family care. Boundaries are not betrayal. They are proof that the love you offer is alive. If you have faced a moment like mine, I hope my story gives you courage to draw the line you need. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this resonated, tell me where you are listening from. Leave a comment with your own turning point, and please like, subscribe, and share so more people can find a story that steadies them. I wish you steadiness and a kind tomorrow.